mentioned this last week, a person of jealousy does not really care about what they don't have. They care about what the other person has. Their father's love could mean nothing to them. But the idea of it being with someone else now becomes problematic. Like no one cared about, you know how children are? Like no one was playing with that toy and one kid grabs it, every kid wants it. That's immaturity, but that's how we are as well when it comes to different aspects of dunya. Like no one cared about it when no one had it. But the fact that you have it now, I want it too. That's يَخْلُ لَكُمْ وَجْهُ أَبِيكُمْ وَتَكُونُوا مِنْ بَعْدِهِ قَوْمًا صَالِحِينَ. And afterwards we'll become very righteous and pious and we'll go ahead and do tawbah and we'll be alright. Meaning, like there's no such thing as premeditated tawbah, right? Like you can't plan the sin and plan the forgiveness. That's not how it works. Allah's forgiveness is not empowerment to sin. It's motivation to seek forgiveness after the sin. This is where we ended. The story continues as these brothers are making this plot and plan and planning against Yusuf alayhi salam and to kill him. One of the brothers stands up. And he stands up and he says, قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ. One of them spoke up. One of them, whilst they're sitting and talking about Yusuf in this manner, he stands up. In the Mufassirun comment and they say, this happened to be the eldest brother, or the brother whose name was Yehuda. Yehuda was his name. And what I find to be profound, which is really interesting, is that the other brothers' names are not preserved by any measure. No one knows them. And not that it's important to be known, but Allah preserves righteousness, right? Like everyone knows the story of Hajar because of what she did. It's not because people were there. It's because what she did became notable in the eyes of Allah. An act of sincerity has a voice that is heard beyond our lifetimes, because it continues to have a ripple effect on our children's lives and our families' lives. So, قَالَ قَائِلٌ. The eldest brother, they say, Yehuda. The other names we don't know. But Yehuda's name was preserved through the entire religion of the Yehud. That even though we don't put one and two together, Allah kept that name. As if to say that because of you standing up for the truth in that moment of difficulty, we have given you we have made you notable and mention worthy, and people know who you are because you stood up at the time of difficulty and the time of injustice. قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ. One of them stood up and said, لَا تَقْتُلُوا Yusuf. You will not kill Yusuf. You are not killing my baby brother. And there's also interesting that the Prophet teaches us that your elder siblings, or your eldest specifically, in so many ways play the role of your father and mother in the absence of your parents. Like the hadith Prophet he says where al-khalatu bi manzilatil that even your aunt and your khala is like your mother in regards to your level of etiquette towards her. Your elder siblings also play a similar role. And it's natural, if you're an elder sibling, you would know this. There's always a level of affection, and like sometimes it's tough love, but behind all that toughness there is love. But I would be remiss to say that it shouldn't be that tough. That it shouldn't be so tough that the love cannot be felt. The person has to guess. No one has to guess that their parents love them. So if you wish to play the role of an elder sibling, and play that role of being the guide, be like that parent. That your siblings shouldn't have to guess that you love them. You should guide them, and it's natural that what your older brothers do, you also want to do. So you now have a great liability on your shoulders as well, because normally the path that you tread becomes a sunnah for them as well. Right? Like where Shaykh Abdullah went to study, Mufti Abdul Rahman went, so we also went. That's the norm of how, if your siblings are influential in your life, and if you're an elder sibling and you don't have influence in your younger siblings' lives, that means you're doing something wrong. Not influence as enforcing them, but influence to the point that your opinion does matter, because they know how much you love them and they know how much you care for them. So Yehuda is like that older brother. So there's like a moment of softness. He's like, no, you're not killing Yusuf. That's not going to happen. The Prophet says that speaking the truth and speaking against injustice in front of a tyrant ruler is the greatest presence of jihad in our life. كَلِمَةُ حَقٍّ عِنْدَ سُلْطَانٍ جَائِرٍ. Speaking up when the waves and the waves and the flow and the climate is going the opposite way. Like speaking up for Gaza when no one was speaking up is far different than speaking up now because you just look like you're blind, deaf, and dumb. But speaking up when no one was speaking, of course, it's always virtuous. But speaking up at that time when it wasn't like the woke thing to do, and it's beautiful that it's the woke thing to do because it's become the default. But when it wasn't, speaking up at that time and the potential of the consequences that came with that are far different than the person who doesn't bear the same consequences and speaks up. Kalimatu haqq, speak the truth. Even if it means that there will be consequences that I have to face. Oftentimes, this hadith is used by us in the wrong application. The hadith says, speak the truth even if it's bitter. Speak the truth even if it's hard for people even if it's not palatable. This hadith doesn't mean speak the truth to someone who doesn't have a voice. It doesn't mean to speak down to someone. It doesn't mean to demean someone and terrorize someone with your tongue. And then justify it by saying, no, the Prophet told us, speak the truth even if it's bitter. That's not what it means. It wasn't used as ammunition against those who were already found to be inferior. It's not used for that purpose. It's not used to sell, like someone like makes you something like, yo, this is horrible. The Prophet told me to speak the truth. You're actually allowed to lie in that moment. Yo, it's really, really good. So why aren't you eating more? It's so good. It's meant for the birds, you know. But kalimatu haqq, it doesn't mean speak the truth when people don't have a voice. It means speak the truth when you don't have a voice. When you may potentially have to face a consequence in front of someone who has an authority over you in a situation where you are more vulnerable. This is speaking in front of justice. Speaking against injustice. So one man spoke up. And this is really important to understand. قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ. One of the 10 brothers spoke up. Binyamin being the other who wasn't a part of this, right? One of them spoke up. Oftentimes we can find ourselves saying that what's the point of me speaking up? I'm only one person. What's the point of me praying? I'm only one person. What's the point of me deciding to choose to live a certain lifestyle? I'm only one person in the family. The first thing is that concept and that idea is incorrect in so many ways. Primarily because even if we were heavy in number, we don't have impact. Impact comes from Allah. Whether or not I have a strong backing of numbers or I have no one backing me, numbers don't define impact. The idea that I'm only one person shouldn't motivate me to or not to do. Ultimately, the power of impact is in the hands of Allah. And Allah speaks about this in the Quran multiple times. كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرًا. How many small groups were able to dominate larger groups? Even if it's not the cool thing to do, my wedding will be done in a certain way. Even if it's not the cool thing to do, we won't have certain types of things in a gathering that are haram. But no one does it. The idea is that even though no one does it, it's still the right thing to do. قُلْ لَا يَسْتَوِي الْخَبِيثُ وَالطَّيِّبُ وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ كَثْرَةُ الْخَبِيثِ. If we allow the standard of good and bad to be based on what society defines for us, then we end up in a society where burying daughters becomes the norm like it was in Mecca. We have goalposts that are defined to us by that which is objectively the truth. The Quran and Revelation, which has no bias. And there's no relativity to it anymore. It's by default the truth, and it's by default what is better for us. So the idea, Allah says, لا يستوي الخبيث والطيب. That which is pure will never be equal to that which is impure. or that which is impure will never be equal to that which is pure, even though the evil may seem overwhelming. It may a'jabaka, like means that even though you might be in awe of the evil, like, oh my God, but it looks so good. You know, sometimes like haram food looks so good. Yo, it looks so good though, man. Maybe just one bite. Allah will forgive me, right? But sometimes it looks good. Sometimes looking at someone who's living a life of haram income looks good. It seems attractive. Allah says that even though it may look attractive, because dunya by default is ghurur. It's decorated and it's garnished in glittery and glamoury things that allow the eyes to be attracted to it. This is why the Prophet was taught, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لَا تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ, to not extend your eyes beyond that which you need to extend it to, or else your eyes will pull towards things that your heart will be impacted by. So لَا يَسْتَوِي الْخَبِيث, the truth and falsehood will never be equal. Even if not, the Prophet taught us, بَدَأَ الْإِسْلَامُ غَرِيبًا فَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا فَطُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَى. The Islam began as something very, not strange as a sore thumb, but something strange because everyone was living a life of such heedlessness. It wasn't strange because it was wrong, it was strange because everyone else was so deeply rooted in their wrongs, in their oppressions. In our time, it's strange for people, it's strange for many people that us children live with our parents. It's strange for people to see that, we don't send our parents to like living homes. It's strange for people to see that we give charity. These are not strange things. فَطُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَاء. The Prophet of Allah says, give glad tidings to those who are not strange in a weird way. They're strange in a way that they're common in the heavens, but it might not be the common thing to do in dunya. قَالَ قَائِلٌ. It wasn't the popular thing to do, to speak against your brothers. It would have been much easier if you just went with the flow. And people that just go with the flow, you can get lucky if your flow is good. But in America, a lot of our flows are challenging. So we have to be that qa'il. We have to have a level of awareness that I got to speak up or I got to step out. Either or. I got to speak up or I got to just step. Maybe I can't speak out because this situation is too overwhelming. Just leave then. Let me find my own situation. And it's important to understand that people always like the idea of being strange and being different is spoken about so much in Deen. And I'm referring less to how we dress and more to the actions that we have and the types of social interactions that we keep. Like we have distance between genders in certain situations. In certain situations we don't. We have, in certain places we don't. In certain masjid, I'm just messing around. In thabat we don't, I'm just messing around. I was going to say so much more, but it's being recorded. But my point is to say, thabat is very beautiful. Everyone should come there as well, if you're above the age of 23. You're doing great work. But strange is something, in today's time, the reality is that we don't have a definition of what the norm is. No one can tell you what normal is. Because everyone has their own definition of what normal is. A person that stands for one ideology finds this to be the norm. A person that stands for another ideology finds that to be the norm. There is no definition of the norm. So truly, everyone is a stranger to someone else's definition of what normal is. So it's okay if we don't confine ourselves to their norms. We don't want to be a sore thumb. But at the same time, we want to be able to assimilate to the point that we don't lose our own deen. And again, it has less to do with how we dress. It has more to do with how we present ourselves at a level of akhlaq and a level of good character. قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ. One of them said, لَا تَقْتُلُوا Yusuf. Sometimes, what can one person do? We all know this, that there are people in Michigan that once upon a time were a few, but they started masjids in Michigan and Dearborn. And now look at what we have. Once upon a time, probably a few youngsters that were praying salat at Wayne State. And now look at what we see there. You walk, you find more Muslims there than you find in a masjid. Every corner. I would be afraid if I was a non-Muslim. Sharia law coming here. I'm joking. Well, my point is to say, قَالَ قَائِلٌ. One man stood up. And we are not responsible for the impact. We're responsible for our own, whatever we are obliged to do. Like whether or not, if someone comes to me and asks me, is this haram or halal? Whether or not they eat it is not my responsibility. I just have to tell them what the truth is. The outcome is in their hands. But I have to fulfill my liability to speak up for the truth. Whether or not it will make a difference is in the hands of Allah. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. Allah says, when it came to Badr, in the battle of Badr, 313 against 1,000, and the Sahabas were able to be victorious. Allah says to the Prophet ﷺ, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ. You never shot the arrow when you shot the arrow. Which makes no sense at the pure substance level, because it's oxymoronic. Of course, it makes sense in the Quranic lens. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ. You never shot, you shot the arrow, but the impact that came from it came from Allah. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. That impact came from Allah. Sometimes you give charity somewhere and you see it grow. Like, that wasn't me, that was Allah. Sometimes you come to a gathering to come to the masjid and you make dua, and the dua has an impact. That's not me, that's Allah giving that impact. Allah can take away the impact, Allah can give the impact. Allah can take away the impact of fire when Ibrahim a.s. was thrown within it. And Allah can give the impact to a mosquito to kill Namrud. Right? Impact is in the hands of Allah. So قَالَ قَائِلٌ. One brother stood up. The lesson that we take from it is that we never get caught up on whether or not the impact will be there. We should be worried about whether or not I am fulfilling my responsibility. قَالَ قَائِلٌ. One of them stood up and he said, لَا تَقْتُلُوا Yusuf. Don't you kill Yusuf. وَأَلْقُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ. Go ahead and throw him in the depth of a dark well. يَلْتَقِطْهُ بَعْضُ السَّيَّارَةِ. And one of the travelers will come and grab him. إِن كُنْتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. So I'm going to translate it going from back to front. What he says is, if you are so bent forward and you have committed yourself to harming Yusuf, if you really want to do something, if you are really wanting to harm him, then go ahead and do something which is far less than killing him, which is put him inside of a well, so at least he's not your problem, he'll become someone else's problem. Someone else will get a hold of him. One of the travelers will get a hold of him, but he won't be your issue. He won't be your problem to deal with. Go ahead and get rid of him. And he wasn't giving them the idea of throwing him into a well. He was simply saying, don't kill him, but I know where your mind is and where your heart is. Do something such as get rid of the problem, but don't kill him. So the brothers agreed upon throwing him inside of a well, because it meant that at least the father will not have to be distracted by the love of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. The word ghayabat al-jub, the word ghayaba comes from the word ghayb and ghaib, which means to be absent and unseen. Ghayabat al-jub means like a forest. Ghayab means like a forest, because people get lost in the forest. So ghayabat al-jub means like this dark well that you can't see. If you look down, you can't see because of how dark it is. Jub, there are many words in Arabic which refer to well. Amongst them, bi'r, which is the most common one. But jub refers to a well that is not constructed. So it's pretty much like, it doesn't even, like later on in the surah we learn that this well didn't even have its own bucket. Like, it wasn't like a place that people would go on a normal day-to-day basis to get water. It was a well for travelers. So they would come with their own bucket. You know, sometimes we drive to like Ohio or like somewhere else, to Pennsylvania, and you have to fill up your gas, and you stop at one of those like gas stations where like it's really ghetto, and there's like one pump, like one gas pump. That everyone knows that gas station is not for the locals. It was made for travelers, just so that we have somewhere to fill up our gas. That's ghiyabat al-jub, unconstructed well. It's just there for the sake of people being able to, while they're traveling, be able to grab some water. يَلْتَقِطْهُ بَعْضُ السَّيَّارَةِ. Yehuda, in this statement, he also shows his compassion to Yusuf. That my intention is to tell you that he will be saved. Someone's going to pick him up. So we're going to take him to a well that he is not in your way, but you also don't kill him. Someone's going to take him and he'll live a life without us and without you all. The story continues. Then after they agreed upon this, and after they came to this conclusion, like, you know what, we'll throw him into a well. One man spoke up. There's no bad idea when the idea is against oppression. If it's removing oppression, it's a good idea, you should say it. If you can help remove oppression, you should speak up. لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. Everyone should be caught up, and everyone is worried about oppression on the screens. But how about oppression within our own homes? Sometimes I am the oppressor of my younger siblings, the way I speak to them. Dhulm is not only killing someone, dhulm is taking someone's rights that are given to them by Allah. Right? By the way I speak to people, by the way I interact with them, it's all dhulm. So we have to be careful even in our own situations. So if you see it, we're taught to stop it to the best of our ability. So then after agreeing upon this, they gather and they make a plan to go to the father and convince the father that send Yusuf with us. From this we learn that the father had already been dealing with these children for years. Till now, the father has not let Yusuf out of his sight. Even though the dream had not been seen yet. The dream was simply the straw that broke the camel's back. Hasad, it's like that spark. Like a spark of fire. I just came from California, like, may Allah protect, but one spark of fire causes such a forest fire. And the entire city is affected by it. One spark. Hasad is the same. It's a spark. And it's showing you what you already had in your heart. And it exposes the malice and the jealousy in a person's heart. So they come to the father. They've already come before. This is to show they've already come before. They've already attempted to harm him. But the father was always aware of it and didn't let Yusuf go. But now they are overwhelmed by the dream. And they're committed to harming Yusuf. So they make a plot to convince the father. So they come, Ya Abana, O our beloved father, Ma laka la ta'manna ala Yusuf. You know the word amana? Why don't you trust us with Yusuf? Why don't you entrust us with Yusuf? You know, it's like one-on-one gaslighting. You come off as if the other person is wrong. Like, what's wrong? Why don't you trust me with Yusuf? Rather than digging deep inside of yourself and saying, okay, I gotta fix this. That is why the person doesn't trust me. You know, someone, why don't you speak to me nicely? But why don't I figure out what I'm doing wrong as well? لا تأمن على Yusuf. A victim always plays this card. The victim, why don't you trust me? Why don't you do this for me? And we're taught to always be aware and be wary of our own deeds and our own actions, right? We don't gaslight people. Like, why don't you invite me to your home? Maybe it's because you also don't invite me, which is also a problem. But a person is always aware of their own actions. They're not looking to pass the blame. And this is a way of like a tactic, right? To make the father feel like he's doing something wrong. You know when you start off the conversation, like, why don't you do this? It makes a person feel like they're doing something wrong. And you think like, I don't do it because I don't want to do it. But you're made to feel like you're doing something wrong. You know, something like, why don't you listen to hot music? Like, what are you talking about? I don't because of haram. You know, but everyone does. Why don't you eat this food? Why don't you backbite? Right? Why don't you? It makes a person feel like they're missing out from something. So the sons tactically approach the father and say, مَا لَكَ لَا تَأْمَنَّ عَلَى Yusuf. Why don't you trust us? Meaning that it's a problem that you have. Rather than saying that we have a problem of, having this jealousy towards Yusuf. Why don't you trust us? وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ. Whilst we are people, the word nasiha in Arabic means we are well-wishers for this person. This is why the Prophet says, ad-deenun nasiha. This entire deen is giving sincere advice to one another. Sincere advice. One of the conditions of being a nasih, one of the conditions of being a well-wisher is that when you're giving advice to someone, you're thinking of their betterment before your own. You're thinking of what will benefit them and protect them from harm before you think of yourself. How parents do. That's nasiha. We don't have any bias in it. Like I would want to tell you to do this because it'll be better for me as well. But it's not better for you. A nasiha is to always think about what's better for the other party and give them advice based on that precedence. So they say, وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ. We are the well-wishers of Yusuf. We love him. We'll take care of him. We want nothing but good for him. And they're presenting themselves as if they absolutely are in love with this child. Because that's their way of getting their father's trust back. They say to the father, أَرْسِلْهُ مَعَنَا غَدًا يَرْتَعْ وَيَلْعَبْ. Send him with us tomorrow. Send him with us. يَرْتَعْ وَيَلْعَبْ. يَرْتَعْ إِرْتِعَابْ. It means to run around and race. Literally means graze animals. رَعْيُ الْغَنَمْ. يَرْتَعْ. We'll just go run around, we'll be racing, we'll play. That's like playing sports. We'll have fun together, we'll all be together. وَيَلْعَبْ. We're going to play, we're going to have a good time. So these guys are really, they're planting the idea in the father's mind that we want to include him in what we're doing. And you know when when a person is hiding something, they start compensating a lot, right? And they start giving you more gifts. Oh, what's this for? 1, 2, 3? You met me 3 times today. What happened? No, wallahi, nothing, man. But can you forgive me though? What'd you do? So they're compensating. They keep saying things in this ayah, they say, وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. The first time, they said, لَنَاصِحُونَ. And the scholars of tafsir, they mention, لَنَاصِحُونَ means, we'll look out for his emotions. لَحَافِظُونَ means, we'll look out for him physically. We won't let anyone say anything wrong to him, and we also won't let anyone physically harm him. That's what, emotionally we'll protect him, and physically we'll also protect him. They're compensating. When sometimes you go to your parents and you're saying a lot of nice things, and your parents are yo, what'd you do wrong? Nothing. But don't look at your bumper, right? That's not me. That was a curb, right? That's what inna lahu lahafidun. You're always trying to put something forth to cover up what you're hiding. And this is how the munafiqun were. The munafiqun were very front and center when it came to praising the Prophet in front of people. They were front and center when it came to applauding. They were very front and center when it came to slogans. They were very front and center when it came to optics. Because they understood the game of illusion. They were front and center when it came to, Abdullah ibn Ubay as-Sulul, the leader of the munafiqeen, for the first 2 years in Medina, before the Prophet would give the khutbah, this is really cool, or really weird actually. Before the Prophet would give the khutbah, he would stand on the member and he would give the pre-khutbah. Literally, he would stand up and say that the Prophet has come to our city. We have to take care of the Sahaba. We have committed to him and serving him. All that nice sloganish stuff. And behind them, he's going ahead and plotting against him in Uhud. They're very good at the optics. They're very good at knowing how to compensate. And a believer doesn't, مَنْ غَشَّنَا فَلَيْسَ مِنَّا. A believer doesn't trick one another. The Prophet of Allah says, الْمُؤْمِنُ مِرْآةُ الْمُؤْمِنِ. The believer is like a mirror. Allah in the Quran says about a believer's heart, كَوْكَب. It's like a glass. That a believer's heart is like a glass. And the commentary of that verse teaches us a believer's heart is like a glass because you can see through it. What's on the inside is shown on the outside. The Prophet said a believer does not lie, does not backbite. They don't harm one another. They don't present themselves in a way that they're not. And it's not to say that you're okay to be a bad person. Sometimes this is just the way I am. That's not the point. The point is to become better. It's like saying to Allah, I just don't pray, this is the way I am. The same way, it's like saying, this is just the way I am, I'm really rough around the edges. No, just like how we're forced to work on our worship, we're also forced to work on our character. Every personality fits within the spectrum of Islam. You have the Abu Bakr, the softness and the gentleness, but you also have the Umar, the sternness. Our kindness is not seen to be weakness, and our sternness is not seen to be oppression. Right? We're stern, but we're not oppressive. Right? So the idea of it is وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. They're talking the father up. They're saying all these extra, normally if you want someone to go out with you, say, can you go out with me? Like, imagine taking out your siblings or your friends. Can you please take them? I'll take care of them. Like, bro, why? Why are you saying all that extra stuff? What were you planning to do? Imagine like asking your parents to go out with some of your friends and you say, Wallahi, you're not doing anything wrong. Like, I never said you were doing something wrong. Why do you even have to say that for? And the father responds by saying, قال إني ليحزنني أن تذهبوا به وأخاف أن يأكله الذئب وأنتم عنه غافلون. The father says, look man, I wouldn't mind him going with you, but I'm afraid. I'm anxious. The word huzn is to fear for something that will take place in the future. This is why we say, Allahumma ya'udhu bika min al-hammi wal huzn. Oh Allah, I seek refuge from ham, which means some depression of what happened in the past. But huzn is anxiety of what will take place in the future. Generally, that's what huzn is. So Allah says, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Huzn is also something, khawf is for yourself. Huzn is for someone else. Like for example, if you're afraid for your friend, that's called huzn. That's why Allah says, لا خوف ولا حزن. Meaning, you won't be afraid for yourself, and you also won't be afraid for your siblings and family members, and your friends, in Jannah. So يحزنني means, like I'm afraid for him. I'm not afraid for myself. I have huzn for him. If I let him go with you, perhaps, maybe, أخاف أن يأكله الذئب, that a wolf will eat him. And the father is being very careful with his words, because he could have said, stand down. I know what you're thinking of. I know what you're planning. This is a common discussion under these verses. Like the father knew they were attempting to harm Yusuf and to kill him, why did he end up conceding and letting him go? Why did he not just double down and say, I'm the dad, you can't go? Why not just be stubborn and being harsh on it? And there's many responses. One of the answers is that the father understood that these children of his were they were so set on harming him that if he did not let him go, they would have killed him in his own house. Azm, I don't care, by any means necessary. The second thing that they say, that you could be a prophet, but you don't have the power to stop qadr. Like qadr will roll out. Even though you're Yaqub, you're a prophet of Allah, but you don't have the power to hold Allah's decree back. And he also understood that. So he goes ahead and says, وَأَنْتُمْ عَنْهُ غَافِلُونَ. Like I'm afraid that if he goes with you, a wolf will eat him, not because you want the wolf to harm him, but because whilst you are unaware. Like you're running around and you're older and you're having fun with your friends and he's small, he can't keep up with you. In the tafsir it says that the father said to his sons that you are much bigger, much faster. So you'll be running and walking and he'll be left behind. And when he's left behind, a wolf will eat him. Or maybe he'll lose the trail and he'll get lost. So I'm afraid, not because you have ill intentions, though they did, but I'm afraid because maybe something else will happen to him. And he's treading carefully, because at the end of the day, these are also his sons. And he knows that there's a plan taking place, but there's nothing for certainty. So he puts it out there that maybe a wolf will eat him. And your friends, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, alongside many of the other mufassirun, it's also commented by Ikramah rahmatullah alayh, who is a great scholar of tafsir. He says that in this verse we learn something. That the father actually, unwillingly, unconsciously, subconsciously, planted a seed in the hearts of the brothers. And this is not to say that he was wrong, obviously, but this is to say that we avoid speaking about haram or a sin even when we're trying to protect people from it. Oftentimes you hear people saying back in the days I used to commit this sin and Allah changed my life. I had my jahiliyyah days. That's all. Tell your children about it. It's possible that you committed so and so sins and Allah changed you. But when you mention it to other people, they might start committing that sin and maybe they don't have the ability to change. And I will live with the burden of urging them towards that sin.